What's a pre-listing home inspection? Do you need one when you sell your home? What are the pros and cons of them? I'll be going over all of this right after this. Welcome back. My name is Corpus. I'm a realtor in the Tri-Valley area in the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area, and I post videos every Friday about all things real estate. So sellers frequently ask me, Dale, should I get a pre-listing inspection? In other words, should I pay for one as a seller? Pay for an inspection of my home prior to putting it on the market? Now, I'd say this question is a little bit complicated. There are pros and there are cons. There are advantages and there are disadvantages, and I'll share some of those with you, and I'll leave it up to you to make the decision on whether it makes sense for you to get a pre-listing home inspection. And now I'll preface this by saying that all buyers that I'm working with really do enjoy it when sellers have already purchased an inspection up front, because they can see that inspection and get informed about the property. And in a competitive market, when homes are selling quickly and lots of buyers are wanting to purchase it, they are sometimes more apt to submit an offer when there's a seller prepaid inspection already done, because they don't want to have to put that money out up front. So with that being said, I'll share some advantages and some disadvantages of getting a pre-listing home inspection. I have 6 advantages for you. Number 1, you get to discover the condition that your house is in. Now, a lot of sellers are slightly nervous about the inspection process. They don't know what they don't know. And so if you lived in the house for some time and it's been a while since you purchased, you probably haven't inspected all of the major systems in your house. So what you can do is have an inspector come in and essentially do a full home inspection like they would do for a buyer, with photos, and also consult on some of the items they're going to look at, the systems and the structure of the house. They're going to look at the windows, they're going to look at the HVAC, they're gonna look at the electrical, they're gonna look at the tons and tons and tons of stuff. They're gonna get into the attic, into the crawl space, and as a seller, it's nice to know what's going on in your house. After receiving the report, you're going to know what major issues there are, what minor issues there are, and you'll be able to dialogue with your real estate agent about those issues. If it's me, we'll have a conversation about what makes sense to fix and what maybe is a lower priority on your list, and we can help prioritize your spending and investment so that you can maximize the money on the sale of your house. Number 2, you have the opportunity to proactively make repairs. Now, the home selling process, there are typically buyers that are going to do an inspection on your house. And if you haven't done an inspection ahead of time, those buyers are going to be finding things wrong with your house. They always do. But in that case, it's reactive, and we're reacting to what's being presented to us. So the flip side is to do a seller prepaid inspection ahead of time so that you know what's going on with the house. You can address certain issues if you want to or not, and to be in control of that process. You can choose your contractor, you can get multiple bids, you can even do some of the work yourself. But if we are reacting to it and the buyer is asking us to take care of the work, most likely they're going to want to choose who the contractor is and have it done by a professional. So number 3, we can price the house more accurately. As a real estate agent, one of my jobs is to help sellers determine the list price for their house. And the one thing I always talk about is there's a value range for your house, and ultimately it's worth what a buyer is willing to pay for it. And one of the ways that we can help narrow this range down even further is by having a pre-inspection done. And the biggest challenge is trying to find that sweet spot of where a buyer is willing to offer, and maybe even multiple buyers, but then you as a seller are excited to get that money as well. So if we have a seller prepaid inspection, we're able to see what issues there are, address some, not address others, and at the same time, know more accurately what adjustments that might need to be made to the price in order to reflect the work that still needs to get done. Number 4, we can minimize the traffic in your home. There are likely going to be lots of people coming in to take a look at your house with their real estate agent, touring it and making a decision if it's a house that they want to pursue further. And the main due diligence step that buyers are taking in a hot markets like the San Francisco Bay Area real estate market is doing a pre-inspection themselves. And if 10 buyers decided that they wanted to do a pre-inspection, which does happen on some homes in the Bay Area, now you have 10 different people coming back again with their inspector, spending an hour in your house, going through everything, and you're gonna have a lot more possibility for damage and just exposure to whatever is going on at the time. So I would say that you do potentially limit the amount of times people are coming into your house by getting an inspection done early. It doesn't eliminate it completely because buyers still have the opportunity to inspect if they want, but you can minimize the number of those buyers that will let you get an additional pre-inspection. Number 5, you can improve buyer confidence. One thing I know as a real estate professional, working with buyers as well, is that home buyers, specifically first-time home buyers, are fairly nervous about what they're getting themselves into. Not only are they thinking about the costs associated in the process that they're going through for the first time, but they're also thinking about the house itself and what future problems or issues might arise. So one thing as a seller you can do is get this pre-inspection done before listing your house to help buyers feel more confident about your house versus other houses. The buyers most likely will see your report, and if you have proactively addressed some concerns, or even if you haven't and there aren't issues, you are showing the buyers all of your cards. You are providing them with the information on that they need to make the best decision possible for them, and that is going to give them confidence to either move forward with your house or not. But at the same time, you know that those people moving forward are serious. And what I found out is that seller prepaid inspection before listing your house is gonna attract potentially more and more offers because buyers aren't going to need to do their own pre-inspections necessarily Again, they can, but they might not elect to do that, and it saves them time to put together that offer, but also be competitive. And that's also fear buyers are afraid that they don't do a pre-inspection and they don't have time to do it. It's not worth making an offer. But if you provided that pre-inspection for them, they can be confident and make an offer with terms that are favorable to you. And going with that, you are potentially limiting the number of contingencies or opportunities for a buyer to back out by providing this pre-inspection before listing. The pre-listing home inspection doesn't eliminate the possibility of further inspections by the buyer, but it does limit the number of buyers that will elect to include an inspection contingency. And finally, the 6th benefit of a seller pre-inspection is the potential for just a smoother transaction. Now, in a real estate transaction, there's often some back and forth negotiation at the beginning, but also during the inspection period. So if you get your home inspection done ahead of time, you are potentially eliminating any further back and forth negotiations about the price and the terms of the contract. But you're also eliminating any surprises about inspection items that come up later. Now let's flip to the 4 potential negatives of a seller prepaid inspection. Number 1, the cost. As a seller, typically the buyer is paying for a home inspection, and it's going to cost anywhere between $400 and $700, depending on the size of the house. Now, the majority of them are going to be in the $400 to $550 range. If you're the seller, if you as a seller decide to pay for this inspection, you're now taking on that cost. As we talked about, there are advantages to taking on that cost, but the negative is that you are taking on the cost. The second disadvantage of a seller pre-home inspection is the possibility that an inspector is going to notice something that maybe the buyer's inspector wouldn't have pointed out. I wouldn't say this is a huge risk, but each inspector has different gifts and different things that they focus on. So it's possible that the inspector you use might point out something different than the buyer's inspector, and now you're fixing something that might not have been an issue in the first place. Number 3, I'd like to say that this is the biggest potential disadvantage of the seller's home inspection is that you will discover new or hidden issues that you were not aware of previously. And this leads into number 4, which is the seller disclosure requirement. And as a seller, you have an obligation to the buyer per state law, and it's different in every state. But in California, you provide a buyer with both a transfer disclosure statement, also known as a TDS, and a seller property questionnaire, also known as the SPQ. These disclosures list out defects in the home, and it's focused more on the big defects, not the little cracks in the sidewalk or things like that, but it's focused on those bigger issues. And as a seller, if you get that inspection ahead of time, you are now bringing on potential new things that you need to disclose. And we've talked about it and the benefits of ways that you could address those concerns ahead of time. But if you weren't planning to address those things or didn't know about them and didn't want to deal with any of them, now you are putting the burden on yourself to present that information on to the buyers. And the easiest way to do it is going to be to provide that inspection report. And most sellers will get that inspection report and make it available to buyers as a supplement, essentially, to their disclosures. All right, so we've talked about lots of benefits of a seller paid pre-home inspection, and we also talked about some potential negatives of the pre-inspection, and I'll leave it to you to decide if it makes sense to get that pre-inspection done before listing or if it makes sense to let the buyer do their own due diligence. If you found this helpful, do me a favor and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. You may also want to check out my past video on the 9 questions to ask a real estate agent when selling a house. And the link to that video is the top corner of this screen. Again, I'm Dale Corpus from eXp Realty in San Ramon, California. I help buyers and sellers throughout the Bay Area and Tri-Valley, and I'll see you on my next video.